Guys, I just read the hottest, steamiest, drool-inducing 5 chili pepper spicy book that is guaranteed to have your toes curling. But I'm not talking about any of that. Hello everyone, and welcome to my new segment that I like to call Everything But the Spice, where I review the internet's hottest romance books and talk about everything but the spice. The idea recently popped into my head as I just finished reading Caught Up, Book 2 in the Into Darkness series, written by Navessa Allen. You may know her from the first book in the series, which is Lights Out. It was very popular on Booktok, and people have been waiting for Book 2, myself included. Anyway, after I finished Caught Up, I decided to look at Goodreads just to see where everyone was at with the book. Personally, it wasn't my favorite, but I'll get into that later. I look at the 1-star reviews and I am bombarded with all these people that are complaining about the political aspects of the book. I had a mini crash out about it on my TikTok, which you can see if you want, but the more I kept thinking about this book and all the reviews, the more angry I got. What do you mean? People pick up these books that are really popular on the internet and only read them for sexual gratification? What do you mean no one's reading them for the plots? This is news to me. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of to be expected. No one was really gonna truly understand the complexities of this literary masterpiece that is Caught Up. So having people go on the internet and say, man, too much politics, not enough sex, was not entirely surprising to me. And I thought to myself, well, maybe I can't stop people from reading these kinds of books for their own nefarious purposes, but I can absolutely ruin the mood. It is my cross to bear, unfortunately. I must become the literary block. So today I'm going to give you a pretty basic rundown of all the political themes that are in this book, that being sex work, misogyny, and of course the LGBTQ community. So put your clothes back on, because we are going to be talking about everything but the spice in Caught Up. Now first, a disclaimer: by the nature of this video and the topics I'll be covering, I will have to censor myself. I know, collective boo, everyone hates it. It's kind of funny how platforms will push spicy content and yet they draw the line at you saying the word sex. But I digress. I'll still have to abbreviate some words like S-work or S-ual, and if I can, I'll just try to talk around it so it doesn't sound as weird. But this will be a spoiler-free video, so you can comfortably watch it and still read Caught Up without any spoilers. Now, as a brief summary, if you don't know what Caught Up is, it's the second book in the Into Darkness series, as I already mentioned. Now, this book further expands the Lights Out universe, this time centering on a different love interest. He's the cousin of the main character we met in the first book, and his name is Nico Jr. They shorten his name to just Jr. I prefer to call him Nick. Nick is not only a bad boy biker guy, but he's also in the mafia. And he has been obsessed with his high school fling Lauren for the past 10 years. They had a pretty bad falling out where she had to transfer schools, and he's had to keep his distance, you know, to keep her safe because he's in the mob. But now that her dad's out of the way, he has all green lights to make his move on Lauren. Lauren is a cam girl, but she's also very passionate about her advocacy work, in which she secures rights and protections for S-workers. Eventually, in a not-so-chance encounter, Nick and Lauren are reunited. Initially, Lauren is on the fence, especially given their past together, but you know, with some time and some coaxing, they eventually have a relationship, bond, situationship kind of deal. The main conflict in this book involves Lauren, as she is an investor in a very particular club. This club is called Velvet, and I cannot really say what happens inside the club, as this video will be taken down. But just know that a lot of the scenes take place in Velvet. Now, given the kind of things that happen in Velvet, they don't have a lot of options as to where they can operate. So they're stuck in this one building and their landlord is hiking up the rent. So Lauren, her friends, and the other investors have to find a new home for Velvet. Again, they're very passionate about their work, so they want to make sure that people have a fun and safe place to explore. As Lauren is struggling on that front, she's also struggling with her feelings for Nick. You know, they have that rough past, but he's also very talented. It's hard to make a video of everything but the spice when there's a lot of spice. Anyway, that's kind of the gist of what happens in the book. You can read it for yourself if you'd like, but heed the trigger warning is all I'm gonna say. But with that out of the way, let's get into the rest of the video. First, talking about the LGBTQ community. So the biggest reason that people rated this book 1 star is because of the inclusion of one character by the name of Ryan. Ryan is non-binary and goes by they, them pronouns. They are Lauren's roommate, editor, and very good friend. Now, one of the things that I praised this book for actually had to do with this character. When Ryan is introduced, there's never a weird moment where our main character feels the need to explicitly say that Ryan is non-binary. They just effortlessly slip into using they, them pronouns, and I absolutely loved it. Because with any other cisgender character that uses she, her, or he, him pronouns, you would never expect the same explanation. For example, our main character Lauren never has a dialogue where she says, "Hi, I'm Lauren. I'm a cis woman and I go by she, her pronouns." That would sound kind of weird and ridiculous, would it not? Because she, her, and he, him is standard. It's what we're used to. Anyone using pronouns outside of that is abnormal, uncommon, or just weird. Again, further playing into our preconceived notions of gender, what names are assigned to what people, and all that jazz. But again, it's only weird to people that only function in that binary. But by making it so that this character never has a moment where they explicitly state that they are non-binary, it makes it more normal. It challenges what you as the reader consider as normal. And don't get me wrong, I completely understand why some identities are made abundantly clear. For example, I just finished reading Cemetery Boys, in which our main character is a trans man. The fact that he is trans is integral to the story, and his gender identity contributes not only to the conflict, but to the magic system. That is a perfect example of a book where it is crucial that you state a character's identity. But there's plenty of other books where it's just not as necessary, and it almost feels a little awkward when you're reading and the narrator suddenly cuts away to tell you a character's identity. It's almost like they're having an aside. They're breaking the fourth wall to talk to you, the reader, directly about a character's pronouns. Now, I get it. This is still representation, and in no way am I saying that it's bad. For a lot of people that are still defaulting to the binary, it can be helpful to have a character's pronouns be explicitly stated. For me, it's a little redundant because I've been in the community for probably over a decade now. I'm more familiar with non-binary people and just in general people that don't use the binary pronouns. But to someone that's still trying to figure it out and maybe unlearn some of the prejudices that they grew up with, this can be extremely helpful. And even not, it's still representation and it's still overall beneficial for the community, especially when a lot of supposed queer representation in media is just fan theories and sidelong glances between actors. I tell you from experience, guys, I was in the super Wholock fandom. I was screaming, Destil is canon, Dean Winchester is bi, as they carried me away in a straitjacket. I know what it's like to have the truth stare me in the face and the world sing, "They were really good roommates." So yes, having books and TV shows explicitly state that a character is queer is a direct result from years and years and years of queer baiting. But as we get more and more representation in media, I think it'll be equally as beneficial when you have non-binary characters and characters that just happen to be non-binary. Sounds similar, but there is a difference. When a character's gender identity is not made front and center, it allows them to simply exist. Yes, Ryan is non-binary. Yes, they use they, them pronouns. But Ryan also enjoys editing. They have an amazing sense of humor, and yes, they're passionate about S and S work. They are also driven to advocacy to make S work safer for everyone. They are a devoted friend to Lauren, and honestly, they're the only one with sense in this whole book. When your best friend comes to you and says, "Hey, this dude has been stalking me for 10 years, the correct response, which is Ryan's response, is to grab a bat. Ryan was the only one that had a sense of panic when they heard that the love interest put a military-grade tracking device in Lauren's bag. Now, I did hear some criticism where people were saying that Ryan is essentially a sidekick and they're only there to ask Lauren if she's okay, which I kind of understand the criticism, but at the same time, they're a side character. That's kind of what side characters are for. They support the main character. Yes, ideally you give them their own personalities, hopes, and dreams, but for what the book is, I don't think they did too bad with Ryan's character. Realistically, we probably won't see that much of Ryan in the future. When the inevitable third book comes out, it's going to center this other character named Tyler, and I just don't see them overlapping. I mean, Ryan will probably make an appearance, but I just don't think they will be central in this next book. Although I champion for book 4 to be about Ryan, I don't know. They really intrigued me, and I think they're really funny. I would love to see them get explored more. And I would just also love to see Navessa Allen piss off some people. But regardless, right now we only have the third book confirmed. And does it really make sense to build up the backstories of characters that we may not really see again? No. There's a popular saying amongst the writing community, which is, kill your darlings. Essentially, don't get too attached to a line or a scene or certain details that you've put in the book. Don't be afraid to cut some stuff away. Selfishly, do some of us want to hear more about Ryan? Absolutely, but it's just not that necessary. The focus of this book is Lauren and Nick. Adding any more detail to any side character, whether it's Ryan, Taylor, Tyler, or whoever, just takes focus away from our main couple. But I understand where people are coming from, and I think this conversation actually stems from a separate concern with the portrayal of Black side characters. Now, the Black best friend trope has been heavily criticized because, yes, oftentimes these characters don't really have personalities and they're only there to help the main character fulfill their dreams. But what makes this criticism unique is the race aspect. There's a video that I saw on TikTok that for the life of me I cannot find, but it spoke about this much more eloquently than what I'm about to say now. If anyone can find it, I will be eternally grateful. Put their @ or just send me the video because I went through everything. I went through my likes, I went through my recently viewed, can't find it, but just know that it exists. But essentially, in that video, this person broke down that the Black best friend trope actually stems from the mammy figure. Now, if you don't know, the mammy figure is a portrayal of Black women where they are nurturing white children specifically. Now, of course, the mammy stereotype is rooted in slavery, where Black women were made to take care of white children. But make no mistake, this is a caricature of Black women, and it portrays them as not being enslaved really, because this is the work that they want to do. And even though this caricature is not explicitly shown in the Black best friend trope, its ugly roots are still visible. The reason it's much more sinister than just having a one-dimensional side character is because their personality is often heavily dependent on racial stereotypes. The Black best friend character is often sassy, aggressive, boy crazy, or otherwise overdramatic. Take any Black best friend character, whether it's from books, TV shows, or movies, and more often than not, you can look at their character traits and trace them back directly to stereotypes, which is what makes them so harmful. But again, this conversation is not universal. It doesn't apply to all side characters. The criticism, therefore, cannot be easily applied to this situation. Ryan's personality is not entirely dependent on their identity as a non-binary person, nor are any of their traits a stereotype of non-binary people. Sure, maybe we don't get a huge in-depth backstory, maybe we don't see all that much of Ryan, but it's not because they're non-binary, it's just because they're a side character. In my opinion, I think that the inclusion of Ryan's character was a great addition to the book. It provides representation in a genre that, honestly, doesn't have a great rep with the queer community. Oftentimes, queer people and relationships are heavily sexualized in straight media. I mean, just last year, I reviewed Blood of Hercules, where we had two men that were in a committed relationship with each other, as well as being the love interests in that book. We're told that these two men have deep feelings for each other, and yet we never see them exchange an I love you, a kiss. God forbid, they don't even hold hands. We do, however, get a plethora of scenes where they're getting down and dirty, banging the wall, doing a little 1-2, if you know what I mean. Mind you, the two men I'm talking about are Achilles and Patroclus, the most arguably well-known romance in all of Greek mythology. I talked about it a little bit more in that video, which you can watch if you want. I'll put it up here for your pleasure. But oftentimes, men in those kinds of relationships are heavily sexualized for women's gratification. They don't value it as a real loving relationship. They just see it as two men hooking up. Now, I'm not saying that this applies to all people that enjoy the romance genre, but there is a not so silent majority of them that love to indulge in queer sexual fantasies, but don't actually value any real queer romance. And with the rights of queer people under attack, this is 100% political, and yes, it does involve you. You don't get to enjoy us for your own gratification in private and deny us in public. The sad reality is that people probably would have been more okay with Ryan as a character if they had a sex scene in the book, but they don't. They just exist as a character, and yeah, they get into a relationship, but we don't see anything more than that. Because the reader doesn't get the opportunity to sexualize them, they don't see them as valid. And someone put it perfectly in my comments, non-binary folks are not political. It is the people that are trying to pass legislation to strip away their rights that are making it political. It's really a non-issue. You can just say that you're not used to reading they, them pronouns in books. So if it's a little awkward to read at first, I can understand if you don't have that much experience, but to that I would just say, read more queer literature. Really, this is a you problem. You cannot read. You need more experience. This is not a them problem. Honestly, you guys are just kind of telling on yourselves. If you're rating this book 1 star because of one character, it tells me 2 things. 1, you only read the book for the sex scenes, which, I mean, I guess I can't fault you for. But then 2, if you only read it for the scenes and got distracted by a character's pronouns, you're kind of a loser. What? In a book that's full of schlong and biddies, you paid attention to a character's pronouns? That's a little sad. It's a little pathetic. But anyway, moving on to the second non-issue that people made an issue, which is S-work. Yeah, this section's gonna have a lot of censoring, so I apologize in advance. So our main character, Lauren, as I already mentioned, is a cam girl. So she's an S-worker. She has the equivalent of an OF account where she posts videos, chats with subs, and otherwise makes explicit content. This is a big part of her life and her personality, as it also contributes to her advocacy work. At the beginning of the story, she has just met with a councilwoman to pass legislation to make S-work safer. If I'm not mistaken, I think that they specify that she was specifically fighting so that S-workers would have an easier time reporting harassment, assault, and stalking. But I could be wrong. All I know is that it was definitely some kind of legislation to make it safer. Lauren also attends rallies, and overall she's very passionate about her career and has no intention of ever leaving the profession. Now, apparently, a lot of people also seem to take issue with this aspect of Lauren's character. Funny. It seems some readers love it when a woman gets freaky on video, that is, if her stalker boyfriend is watching through a hidden camera, but not so much when she starts making money off it. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about the concept of decriminalizing S-work. Now, when you hear something like decriminalize or even legalize S-work, it might sound a little jarring if you're not really sure of what that means. But we just have to put it into perspective. Let's take, for example, weed. The legalization of marijuana, especially for medical use, has brought about the creation of dispensaries. Now, the danger of the grass in the past was that you really had no idea where it came from or what was really in it. For example, the FDA, when it works anyway, is in place to help regulate our food, drink, and medicine to make sure that you don't get sick from things like salmonella and you know exactly what it is you're putting in your body. These kinds of regulations just can't be enforced when you're buying marijuana off the street. But getting that product from a licensed dispensary means that it is regulated and it is subject to state testing for things like contaminants. It's the regulation that makes the consumption of marijuana safer. And the legalization of recreational marijuana in states like California, Colorado, and Illinois means that people are no longer being arrested for possession. Therefore, it's been decriminalized, which, as we already know, Black and brown people are disproportionately incarcerated for low-level crimes like possession, making them victims of the system and further feeding into the prison industrial complex. But I don't need to explain that to you because you already know about it. I hope, I pray, I beg. It's almost like everything's connected, and one issue never impacts just one person. And when you advocate for yourself, you're advocating for other people, because at the end of the day, we're just humans on one earth and we're all fighting one giant, and that is capitalism and the 1%. Anyway, that's the example with weed. And yes, it does apply to S work. Oftentimes, the people that are in S work do so because it's the most accessible way for them to make money. And by decriminalizing it, we make it so that the people that are engaging in this line of work are not going to be arrested for what's arguably a low-level crime, a civil infraction at most. Because ideally, the people you want to see put away in prison are, I don't know, maybe people that commit felony tax evasion, or I don't know, maybe we're convicted of 34 felonies. You know, the real dangerous, hard criminals. Now, the common argument against decriminalizing S work is that it would theoretically make it easier for people to commit S trafficking and take advantage of women. Which, yes, no one wants to make S trafficking easier. No one wants S trafficking to really happen. But there are other important questions that you should be asking. If lawmakers are really concerned with S trafficking, then why don't they pass legislation to make it easier for victims to come forward? Why don't they pass harder sentences for people convicted of rape or assault? Why do we have alleged rapists in office currently? If lawmakers are really concerned about women, then why don't I have the right to have an abortion? Why was the cadaver of a Black woman used against her family's wishes as an incubator? If they really care about women and women's safety, why is all of this happening? Why is it that the police have to wait for something to actually happen before they act? Just in Illinois, there was a case of a woman who had an order of protection. She repeatedly told law enforcement that her abuser would unalive her given the chance, and then lo and behold, she was unalived. It was entirely preventable. If we cared about women, why was that allowed to happen? The truth is that they don't care about women. It's the same bullshit excuse they give about keeping trans people out of bathrooms because, oh, it's to protect women so they don't get raped in bathrooms. Okay, so why don't you care when women are raped on college campuses, at parties, or I don't know, in their own homes? Yeah, they try to say that it's to protect women, but you need a critical eye, because that's not the reason. Because really, the reason why we struggle to have this conversation and the reason why S work isn't decriminalized is because of the stigma, and the stigma is rooted in misogyny. Sure, there is a heavy taboo around the S work industry, but it seems we never go after the people that are paying for these services. But no, we instead focus our vitriol and criticism on the women, the people that are partaking in the S work itself. If an S worker is assaulted on the job, the stigma that we've normalized is to say that, oh, well, you chose this line of work, therefore you were asking for it. Women are stripped of their rights the minute that they choose to engage in sexual activity for money. And it is this misogyny that prevents any real legislation from being passed. The S work industry is seen as a moral failing, but if people really had a problem with it, again, they would go after the people that are paying for it. But no, they don't face the same retribution. When a man goes to an exotic dance club, it's normal, God forbid, his right as a man. If a guy does camera work, then he's the luckiest man alive because he gets to be with a different woman every day. But if a woman does cam work, then she's a slut and a disappointment to her father. Which is interesting because you would think that this does interest the people of Booktok, the readers that enjoy the romance genre. Because yes, the genre is also heavily stigmatized by people on the outside, looking at the women that enjoy it as just wanting to read about sex. Having women express themselves openly on platforms like TikTok and seeing books like Caught Up hit the bestseller list is an advancement for women, because we're showing the general public that books and media centered around women's pleasure are valued. And yet it is the same readers, the same women that will scream on the internet, "I like what I like and you can't judge me," that will then turn around and shame people like Lauren, S-workers. But thankfully, we are making some, albeit small, steps towards having a safer industry. Recently, in May, the Take It Down Act was passed, and I think it was bipartisan. This legislation that was passed criminalizes the use of deepfakes for explicit content without the user's permission. And of course, this is a positive for everyone, especially for victims of deepfakes, but it also makes the S-work industry safer because this act forces platforms like OF and the Black and Orange website to be more regulated. These websites are still very much like the wild, wild west. There's really no regulation, there's no governing body to make sure that things like revenge porn and content featuring minors get circulated on the website. Sure, you could report those videos, but oftentimes they wouldn't get taken down. This legislation holds these websites accountable and requires them to act within 48 hours of report, which again is a step in the right direction because it makes it safer for the rest of us as well as the people that are in the industry. It's showing these sites that, yeah, they can't just skate by doing whatever they want anymore. The government can step in and regulate them. And of course, it does clear up the deepfake videos from the platform so that real, legitimate content can be circulated safely. I'll talk briefly about the legalization of S-work. You can find the legalized forms abroad, especially in Europe, in like brothels and things like that. Legalization, of course, means that S-workers could get things like health insurance, benefits. It would essentially be a job. They would get paid a normal wage and they would have to pay taxes. But a counter argument for the legalization of S-work is that it would then put up kind of like a barrier. The representation of marginalized communities and S-work is extremely high, with a lot of Black and Brown communities as well as women partaking in the industry. By making it legalized and forcing S-workers to have the proper documentation and licenses, it might prevent lower income and otherwise disenfranchised groups from participating. That's a whole conversation in and of itself, and I see both sides, but overall, the legalization would also be a step in the right direction. Not only would it provide benefits to the S-workers themselves, but it would also greatly improve their health. By requiring them to get certain checkups and testing done, it would also reduce the spread of certain diseases, which again, benefits all of us. Overall, I'm really glad that these topics were covered in this book. I was not expecting it. It was a pleasant surprise. Honestly, I was more surprised with how offended people got and how up in arms people were about the politics of it all. The only reason that people see it as political is because our bodies have been made political. Some people have made it their mission to make it so that certain people can't exist comfortably in the world, that being members of the queer community, and yes, women. And for a genre that is absolutely dominated by women, these issues concern you. You should be up in arms that the rights of queer people are being stripped away. You should be up in arms that the rights of S-workers are being stripped away. If you think it doesn't affect you, just wait. The time will come, and by the time you figure it out, it'll be too late. If you enjoy the romance genre, then these issues affect you. So if you were just trying to read this book for gratification, then fine, go ahead. But I hope you hear my voice in the back of your mind saying, "It's all connected." If you think the government wouldn't do that, oh yes, they would. Al Capone is the reason you have expiration dates on your milk. Yeah, I was also going to talk about the mafia in this video, but it's already too long, and I'll just give that little fun fact. Yeah, Al Capone is the reason you have expiration dates. I think the story is like someone related to him or someone affiliated with him got sick from drinking expired milk and died, and then he lobbied the government to have expiration dates. I'm not sure what the exact story is, but I think that's it. So needless to say, you can read these books for entertainment. I mean, that's what I read it for. I was just having a fun, goofy time. I wasn't even gonna review it on the channel. I just, I liked the first book and I wanted to read the second one. As someone who is already very aware of the issues that are going on, I already understood a lot of the topics that Navessa Allen was tackling in this book, but seeing so many people be up in arms about it, I couldn't sit by. I couldn't just sit here while people were up in arms about a non-binary character and what a woman chooses to do in her free time. So yeah, did I really like the book? No, not compared to the first one. And that's just because, listen, in the first book, he was funny, he was charming, he was a little, like, he was very much golden retriever, given the fact that he is also a stalker and a little creepy. He's a hear me out, okay? He's a hear me out. But in the second book, he is a mafia bad boy and he rides a motorcycle. Maybe I'm just old or some, I don't know. I don't like motorcycles, okay? I see them on the road and they freak me out. They weave in and out of traffic. I get so scared for them. I'm like, please don't do that. You have no protection. I freak out when I see people in shorts on a motorcycle. I'm like, oh my God. I just remember the Human Crayon commercial. Oh, so no, I don't like motorcycles and I don't like bad boys, okay? Because despite the fact that I'm extremely confrontational, I cry when people yell at me. I don't like when people are aggressive. When he's going crazy and popping some dude's arm out of his socket, I gasped. I almost threw up. I'm like, that's too aggressive. Talk to me nice. Also in the book, Homeboy, our main character, our love interest, grabs Lauren and choke slams her hard as fuck against the wall. And you know, I get it. He got tased and didn't know who did it. I know. I'm not even giving any details. This must sound crazy if you don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, he did that to the point where her voice was hoarse and her throat was bruised. And she's like, oh, I don't want to tell my roommates because otherwise they won't like him. That's like when you don't tell your friends about a toxic thing that your boyfriend did because you don't want them to not like your boyfriend. Like, I won't go so far as to say that it's toxic. I will say that their relationship dynamic cannot exist in the real world. It only functions in a fictional setting. And again, it's not my cup of tea. I don't like it. He just comes across as straight weird, very stalkerish, and not in the way that Josh comes across in the first book. I don't know. I'll have to reread the first book so I can give you my full explanation, my defense really for why I like the book. This one just didn't vibe with me. But again, I'm not gonna sit here. I'm not gonna put my 1-star review that is valid and full of evidence and real critical thinking alongside other people saying, meh, someone used they, them pronouns and I can't read, therefore it doesn't make sense. I will not be looped into that group. So therefore, I'm going to give this book a 3 out of 5. Not my favorite because I really like the first one. Did I necessarily expect them to be the same? No. Really, this is just a learning experience for me. I don't like mafia romance, okay? Lesson learned. Overall, yeah, if you don't think a book is political, you're not thinking hard enough. You're not reading closely enough. You're not thinking critically enough. But yeah, that's the end of my spiel. That was everything in Caught Up except for the spice. Be sure to leave a like, a comment, let me know. Have you read the book? What did you think about it? Did you guys know that people were up in arms about a non-binary character? Just let me know down below. And of course, be sure to follow me on all my social media at Listen to Kristen on TikTok, Instagram, and Goodreads. You can check out Caught Up for yourself. Be sure again to read the trigger warnings. It's not your typical romance. There's some heavy stuff in there. If you need a clip of just the trigger warnings, I posted a video of me reacting to them. So you can find that on my TikTok. Anyway, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. And you know, if you want me to review other spicy books in this format, I can do so happily. I would love nothing more than to ruin someone's day. But anyway, yeah, I hope you guys like this video and I will see you in the next one. Anyway, yeah, drop your spicy book recommendations in the comments. Or not. I'll live if you don't. Thank you.